We're going to take the panel in two ways. The first way is we're actually going to take you all the way from the creative process. So actually starting all the way out from the screenwriting part of AI all the way through post-production. And so each of the panelists here is going to be talking about the entire process from A to Z. And then after that, we're going to open up the conversation about some of the topics that we're seeing in the headlines. We're going to have just a nice, healthy debate. And we're going to keep it positive. Positive, you guys. And then we're going to open it up for questions. And that's what we're here for, is just to learn from each other and explore with each other. So first of all, what I'd love for everybody to do is to introduce yourself to the crowd here. So I'll start with the gentleman all the way over to the left. You guys might know him.
Hey, Rich Botto, the CEO of Stage 32. You know me as RP. Outside of running Stage 32, I'm a producer, writer, and actor. And I guess I'm going to be speaking about things from the screenwriting side, I'm assuming. So be prepared for that. It's going to be all gloom and doom. All gloom and doom. No, okay.
Stop it. All right, Sammy.
Hello, everybody. SAMI, ARPA, CEO and founder of Largo.AI. We analyze content at early stage to predict the potential success. Can be a movie, TV series, or advertisements. My background is computer science and filmmaking.
Excellent.
Alan Powell, founder CEO of TONEY Posts. Outside and inside of that, writer, producer, director, and we do a lot of supply chain automation in the post-production process.
Excellent. Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam Pressman, CEO of Pressman Film. We have a 50-year history in producing feature films, but we've been exploring immersive and emerging technology. We have a project here in the immersive competition called Beyond the Vivid Unknown, which is based on Godfrey Reggio and Philip Glass's collaboration, Koyaanisqatsi. And last year we had a piece called Evolver with Terrence Malick and Kate Blanchett, where we explored the circulatory and respiratory systems of the human body. And really happy to be here. Love Stage 32. Woo, Cam! 2025! Thank
Love
you.
it. All right, so I have some slacker panelists for you today, as you can see. All right, well, I want to start on the creative development side of AI. There's obviously been a lot of talk in the news about ChatGPT or AI in general taking over the screenwriting space, that screenwriters are going to be out of jobs, and there's been a lot of discussion on that. So Arby, I want to bring it on over to you. You can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, we did a panel here a year ago on this topic, and it was really more on the screenwriting side mostly, and it was pure fear, panic, like everybody was ready to run for the hills. This is it, it's over, it's the apocalypse. Here we are a year later, and it's the exact opposite. I think everybody's realizing that AI is not going to replace the screenwriter, right? It's just not going to happen. And in fact, over the last 4 to 5 months, what you've seen is a ton of original spec sales, especially in America, for high money, for mid 6 figures against 7 figures, which is, you haven't seen that in a while. So the idea that original content is going to go away, or this manufactured content is going to take over, I think is completely overblown. For me as a writer, I use AI for research, and I use it as a tool for sure. But I did, in advance of this, I actually did a little exercise where I had there's a project I'm working on, a script that I'm writing, and I had to do some research on it, and I was doing some deep diving into it. And I kind of kept the narrative going through the research with ChatGPT saying, this is eventually going to be a screenplay. So as I'm putting this information in, I kept prompting it to kind of get to the story, right? Once I got all the research in, it said, okay, this is where it's going to go. Here's a little synopsis. Let's go write the first 10 pages. It was absolute crap. It just took everything that I put in as a prompt, basically, and utilized that into the actual screenplay. when I asked to improve the dialogue, because the dialogue was like, hey Joe, hey Bill, it was like, how do we make it a little bit more nuanced and everything? Just, it's not there. You know what I mean? It's just not there. And I think the other part of it is that people, on the producing side, I'm taking in scripts all the time. You can tell immediately. I mean, you just really can. You can tell immediately. And where I see it mostly is in the dialogue. I'm sure some people are going to have a little bit of a different, like putting it in there for the purposes of like marketability and stuff like that. That's a totally different thing in my opinion. But the actual creative process to me, it's just not there. And even for me, even for coverage, for example, I could put one of my scripts in and say cover this script, and what came back to me was, again, very generic. It really didn't give me that human element of, ways to improve the story, ways to improve the dialogue. Your second act meanders, this answer meanders, but it's, it didn't give me that nuance that I was looking for. So that's my opinion on it. Your mileage may vary, but I haven't seen anything business-wise either that makes me feel like we're headed for disaster in that regard.
Well, I think even after the strikes, there are a lot of protections that were put in for WGA writers.
There are, and they're going to be, obviously we're going to be back negotiating before we know it. I think, it's early next year, I believe. So there'll be, probably more guardrails put in place or certainly proposed. The thing is look, eventually what you're going to have is some sort of regulation. Eventually what you're going to have is some sort of lawsuits. You're going to have some sort of precedent. Things are going to happen that way. And then once that happens once, and, the fences get pulled in a little bit on everything. We haven't really totally gotten there yet either. But, you're seeing things with the Writers Guild, for example, working with CBS News to protect journalists and all that. You're seeing headlines like that like every other day. And it's just that I think the waters have calmed that people don't even talk about it. It's just another article on Deadline and people just go right by it. But every one of those things presents another protection, right? So, and it's the Guild that's out there trying to get that, right? Now we'll see when negotiations start again next year where we land with that. But I feel it's been all positive as far as the guardrails are concerned.
Very excellent. I want to turn it over to you, Sammy. Now, your company, Largo, if you guys haven't noticed, Largo's been everywhere around Cannes. You've really introduced some of the most incredible innovation to our space, and some of the tools and resources that you've made available to us as creatives and filmmakers, is really changing the game. So, can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with Largo and how you can utilize that as a resource, in pre-production and pre-production?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello? Doesn't work. Absolutely. So Largo.AI is in the market now almost 7 years. So we were presenting AI tools before AI got popular. And we've been putting always human at the center because we get original content as an input. And we provide insights around that, again, to help producers, distributors, or at earlier stages also for talents. And the main idea here to provide more interaction with the expected audience feedback. And here we released actually our version 3, and we had 3 main missions in version 3. Immersive. We allow, for example, to chat with your characters. So you have screenplay, you put it into the system and you chat with your characters. So it allows you really to enter the story in a more immersive way. It's actionable. So AI is providing feedback. It says, okay, it will be bad in these markets, but what we can do to improve that. So it provides more actionable insights. And third, human. So AI tools are improving, as Harvey mentioned. It's still not there for generative AI, definitely, but it's very strong for analyzing and getting insights around that. And we've been doing this past 6 years, and we have seen really significant value for the producers that we are working with. And one quick thing, we also recently released our simulated focus groups. So focus group testing is done a lot by studios, but it's very expensive and long process. And in general, independent producers are not able to afford that. What we do, we create digital twins of real people. And they are cool, really, because they don't get angry, they don't get hungry. So you can easily get honest feedback from these digital twins of real people. You can see how people in Japan will respond. Just in 1 hour, you can ask any questions. That's really cool, and we think also that's like a good example of AI, how it empowers human part, because this feedback again comes to independent producers to make them stronger with such tools.
That's incredible. So even breaking it down by region.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, for not any country, but like I guess we have 40, 50 countries. You just select your country. You can even design micro audiences. Sometimes you see people in Los Angeles, let's say between 30 to 50 years old women doing yoga are showing highest interest for the film. So you can really also discover your audience in a very cool way.
And that resource is really at a fraction of the cost.
Exactly, much cheaper and much faster. Fast part is important because even studios cannot do very often focus group testing because it takes time. Now imagine if you can get that feedback in 1 hour, how much it changes actually to the cycle of improvements. That's also one way to understand how AI can augment creativity, not by just writing, doing stuff, but also giving this quick feedback.
And that's something that usually only, like you said, the studios used to have access to. Now independent filmmakers have access to something like that, which is very exciting. So before you embark on producing your own film, you'll be able to have access to see how would audiences, perceive that film, which is something that's very exciting.
Yeah, that has been our mission since from the start. Actually, once we started, we saw Netflix and Amazon are using data and AI very strongly, but the rest of industry doesn't have an access. So we worked on that, how we can bring these AI tools in an affordable way, in a good business model that the rest of industry can have access to well.
Excellent, thanks, Sammy. And Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you. So this year, you have Beyond the Vivid Unknown here at Cannes, which uses AI. So talk a little bit about that, because that's a really interesting film.
Sure. So Beyond the Vivid Unknown is a 3-channel video installation. Just out of interest, who knows of or has seen Koyaanisqatsi or its following a couple lovers? It's an early 1982 film. How about Baraka or Samsara? These were films that followed in the same tradition that Godfrey Reggio started. Very much non-narrative from a traditional perspective. They're, imagine time lapses of highways intercut with satellite images of rivers, right? Watching the cobalt mining in Africa, or seeing ways in which humanity is either reflective of the planet that we live within or out of balance with it. And so we worked in tandem with Godfrey Reggio and the Godfrey Reggio Foundation and Philip Glass to build a model off of what he filmed and create essentially a visual language of Koyaanisqatsi and the compositions that Philip Glass made, and the way that you as an audience member interact with the film. There's a big tracking system that rings the room scale projection. So if you can choose to sit on the chairs, on the couches, and watch it as a film, or you can walk closer to the screen and you both influence what is on the screen as well as what you hear. John Fitzgerald and Matt Tierney, who are the two key creatives, worked with a team of 20 people. It started, John runs the Onassis Foundation's Onyx Lab, which is in New York. They have 20 fellows that come in twice a year, like 2 sessions, and they stay for 6 months training new media artists, learning new ways of creating with these technologies. And I think what's super important to us is that it's a tool that allows you to make something that one would never have conceived of in another time, right? It was incredible. The Minister of Culture came to visit the exhibition yesterday, and she said, you know, the Minister of Culture of France, and she said, you know, I've never seen something like this. This is, to understand that it took you 3 years to create it, and you made it with a filmmaker and their archive, and it's not cinema, it's not video art, it's something else. In a similar way, we made a film, we presented it at Cannes Next last year, and it was written by a large language model trained on Werner Herzog's documentary and literature, and it was called About a Hero. And with that, it wrote a murder mystery documentary in the style of how the machine thought Werner Herzog would imagine it. But it's, who here knows Werner Herzog? Wow, you have a whole world to discover. Those that don't yet know him, good luck. He's this brilliant German director who's made over 100 films, documentaries, narrative features. Very distinct voice that I'm trying to mimic there. And, you know, it's almost an experiment of, that as you were speaking to, Sammy, the language is not, we're not imagining that the language of the GPT is perfect. In fact, let's lean into it and embrace the absurdity of how the machine thinks. The machine wrote about a woman making love to a toaster, you know, in order to access her dead husband. You know, these imaginations are almost something that in this moment we're able to experiment with and contemplate, because we're in this point of transition. And if we just are afraid of it, if we just think, oh, that's synthetic, and by way of that it's not real and it's not something that we should contemplate and engage with, I think we run the risk as an industry of motion picture artists and scientists, like, why turn our back on something that is inevitably part of the process? Let's embrace and ask questions of it and figure out how to empower artists to use it in creative ways. So it's been interesting to think about.
I think, you know, what you just said, I think it just really opens up a conversation. It just opens up your mind to what are the possibilities. And, you know, making love to a toaster, I don't know if anyone would have ever thought about that, you know. And this is like a world that, again, where AI comes in and it just really blows your mind. And the Minister of Culture coming in and saying, wow, I've never seen this before. The one thing I do want to point out is that, and it's the same thing that Sammy, you had said, is that what you were working on, it all goes back to a human element. None of this happened without the buy-in from Werner, as well as with Glass and you know, the other partners. You know, they participated in, and they worked with you, and they did the sign-off on, okay, let's go on this together creatively. You know, so you didn't embark on this inauthentically. You had human buy-in on this creative collaboration together in the production process. And so I think that's really a fundamental part of it. It's almost like a human intelligence, you know, to support the artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so there is nothing of these works without the human. Also paying respect to what we're building the models from. One of our partners on Beyond the Vivid Unknown is a group called Hysteria, based in LA, that's built a clean model. It's called Marie, named after Jules Etienne Marie, that is essentially every bit of data that has been put into the model is licensed and paid for. So there's nothing that's just being scraped off the internet, which is to us really important.
Love that. I'm going to turn it over to you, Alan. So we've made it all the way through production. Now, one of the companies that you own is Tunnel, one of the biggest biggest post houses. So if you guys ever need post-production needs, you have to check out TONEY. There's been a lot of talk about AI impacting the post-production process. Can you give some insight on how you've seen it impacting your work over the last few years?
Haven't necessarily seen it impact our work. AI, machine learning, just the use of machine learning driven algorithms, like general algorithmic tech in the post process has been around for a while. Color correction, general matching, QA, QC, a lot of these have been machine learning algorithms for the longest time, using a data set of this is what it's supposed to look like and matching up new footage, new sources to get to that point, whether it's picture, audio, VFX, whether it's scoping, whatever it might be. There's been advancements there. The general talk fears when it comes to the post process come around the editorial side, being that there's more kind of specific jobs in that lane. And in editorial, you see kind of two pathways. You have your non-scripted and you have your scripted. In the scripted world, your narrative world, your features, television, AI, machine learning is quite a bit away from being able to approach on being able to do anything that the human does at this point. And this is largely because of data size. There just isn't, the way language models work, the way general AI, like any domain-specific models work, they require not just data, they require a lot of data to fine-tune the model to give it results. Editorial, your main end deliverable at the end of the day is an ETL. ETL is edit decision list. And if you look at any EDLs, you can feed AI models, EDLs all day long. All they are numbers. There's numbers that are just in, out from your source, in, out of where it exists in the timeline. There's nothing to learn from that. All you can learn from that is duration, based on this aspect of the script, cuts might get faster, or this or that. And the reason is because it doesn't have the reference to the source material being the dailies itself. Dailies have always been protected. It's not, generally for public on the internet for censorship reasons, security reasons, sensitivity reasons. Dailies, because they've always been under this protected category, they have not really predominantly fed any of these models. So without that level of data, all you're getting is media information. And the other issue, in a lot of the experimentation around narrative editorial, they're finding that in AI, even a lot of these, even the vector-based, video contextualizer models, where it's detecting what's going on in video. When you're shooting something in a series and a person opens and closes a car door 3 times, it doesn't really know why. It thinks they're just opening a car door 3 times. They don't understand that those are different iterations of the same thing. So it's very difficult for it to grab onto the contextual, the temporal nature of when something starts and stops. So that's a world away. Now, on the non-scripted side, that's kind of a different world. There's been a lot of advancements, but it's actually not advancements in the sense that a lot of this has been around for a while. A lot of the editorial systems, the non-linear editorial systems have been using metadata tagging to tag all their video. That's what a lot of AEs do, sometimes manually, sometimes using tools to help them process. Because in the world of non-scripted, there's a lot more. As cameras get cheaper, there's just a lot more footage. I just saw another panel, Mr. Beast's team. They have 500 cameras running on one show, thousands of hours of footage, and you're going to cut it down to an hour. So you're talking about a 0.1%. And they have all these AEs, they're using certain algorithms to find stuff. But there's a lot of advancements in that side, and largely these are things like the AEs wouldn't want to sit there and scrub through that much footage. They want the tools, they like the tools that help cut things down. And there's to SAMI's point, when it comes to the feedback loop, the time it takes to get feedback is very important, because for a lot of non-scripted shows, you have a different hierarchy. You have your story editors, and the typical workflow of story editors come up with these concepts. What if this happens? What if that happens? And they'll watch something down, and it's like, hey, well, what if, let's try something different. Then the AEs have to go off like, okay, we're gonna go find all the variants of, it's like, oh, let's explore this person's storyline. Maybe something happens there. AEs have to go find all the aspects of that and then pull it together, do their selects, do an assembly to see if maybe there's a story there. But by then, the story editor may have lost that thread or have come up with 5 other ideas. That feedback loop is important because the faster we can kind of experiment, even if it's loose and dirty, really helps the creative process. And it allows for more iteration, just like with anything that VFX, iterations like enhance quality. So the more that can be done, like the better, the more versatile the human side of it can create in that sense. So it's been interesting. There's a lot going on, but I find like equal creative innovation that helps the human component just as much as advancements that save time, which from our experience on the post side, VFX artists like AEs and such, like they love it. Because anything that saves time for them, like we don't really find we're concerned about jobs because a lot of these types of mundane, like redundant tasks, half the time, I hate to say, have been outsourced anyway. So it's and even the companies that insource that stuff prefer using tools as well. There's a lot going on in the space, but a lot of fun stuff.
I'm just hearing efficiency, just human efficiency. So your team can focus on what they do best, which is create. And your team is incredibly creative at TONEY.
100%.
Excellent. You guys, I want to ask you, a couple questions. Generally what we're seeing, in the news. There was a little controversy of Adrian Brody being nominated, or actually winning the Oscar this year for The Brutalist, and that they used AI to give him a little bit of a heavier accent. I'm curious from like an ethical standpoint, obviously winning our industry's top honor of Best Actor, getting the support of AI. How do you guys feel about something like that?
A million other things to worry about. The fact that we're even having this conversation, it's art. I mean, come on. I think this is where we lose the narrative with all this stuff. Is that it's everything is so headline driven. I mean, it's our world now. Everything is so headline driven. Everything is a controversy. Everything, but look, it went away as quickly as it came, and it's art. It's a medium. It's art, right? So I mean, you're using the tools that are available to you, right? You want to stand in front of emerging technology, which is what everybody up here is saying. You're going to get steamrolled, right? So to me, it's not a big deal. It doesn't mean anything.
With us today are
I happen to just meet the team that did essentially it was a version of an accent of the dialogue. They had to be like right inside that door over there. Just to break down the process, they fed their model a lot of different iterations of certain accents. Then they take the source, and then through the contextualization of, in an American accent, say, this would be worked, that this pitch would be higher, through all this data, it applied that algorithm. So this would have been the equivalent of, prior to this company existing, would have been done in a sound mix, where you would get your team together, your creative team, sometimes your editorial team, working with the mixer and your sound designers, and they would have been like, okay, what can we do to like make this sound a little better? Like maybe it's pitch, maybe it's speed, maybe it's whatever it is. It would have just been a semi-manual process. What happened
And
here?
it's still a super manual process, right? Like Respeecher is a super iterative process, and then that partnership with the sound designer and mixing it and finding, it's not like it just.
It wasn't a magic button.
No.
Not by any means. It's
And then
just,
they revealed that like Amelia Perez and 4 other movies in the Best Picture category had used
yeah, I just
Respeecher,
saw those clips.
which is just so funny that it said more about the political nature of the Oscar race than it did about anything on Adrian Brody's performance.
People like stuff to talk about. That was something I heard about.
Another headline was at Berlin this year. There was a feature film that debuted called What's Next. It's by a Chinese filmmaker, and the film was made entirely out of AI. It was not critically well received, and so I'm curious. Do you guys see that this could potentially open up a new category of films, or maybe creating awards around specifically films that are made entirely out of AI?
I'll jump in with personally believing that whatever this revolution lands with will actually only increase the cultural value of cinema that's made with cameras, with actors, on location, with all of the tools that for over 100 years we've been developing, right? It will create some sort of mutant new content that will have its own traditions and its own ways of receiving. But I think at the end of the day, it'll only actually make the movies that we love, the process of cinema that we're here at this festival celebrating that much more, I hope, celebrated.
Just can add a few words to that. I think you will see the importance of authenticity and authorship as we will have many AI-generated content and it will be easy to create. We will have a bit of inflation of that, and we see the audience, at least from our point of view, we have a lot of data, right, for the old past movies. I think we have close to 400K content analyzed on our system, that we see audience relevance to talent. I mean, full AI-generated movie, if you remove all these people, if you remove that authenticity element, the interest of audience is dropping as well. Even if it's a perfect story, maybe perfectly created, we will see this more obvious as we will have many more of those contents. And that will be really, that's what we expect, a huge inflation of that in coming years.
Well, I want to be able to open it up for some questions from you guys. Does anybody in the audience have questions for the panelists? Oh,
Hello. My question is, obviously in the media we've seen a lot of articles about how AI can be pretty detrimental to the environment. What do you guys have to say about that, or how your companies are necessarily mitigating that?
This initiative, Mr.
Which environment?
Well, I guess just how the massive amounts of water it uses, how that could potentially be really bad, or how it could eventually, the amount of power it uses could potentially be harmful. Just wondering if that was something you guys are also concerned about.
We had to say
I can tell there's definitely concern as the tech companies are in a competition. They all to do it better in a faster manner. That part might be a bit concerning because that is a lot of energy. But once we make AI usage and required energy for that, we need to look at not just input-output for that element, and also impact of this AI solution, because in many cases that impact also reducing actually the carbon emissions. So that's very important to look at that way, because there is many AI application which is consuming energy, but it also, as an impact, it also reduces significant energy, which is not comparable. It's very important to look at this together.
She was not only a pipeline, it was a line of exchange of work.
Hi, graduate student Sam. I'm super interested in post-production. I'm curious, because right now we know that AI is not super great, but so right now we don't really consider art. But I'm curious, in your minds, if AI can create what is art, which is like human-made, where do you think the line should be drawn
one
on
film
regulation
from the British Petroleum Archive will contain images from Iran and from Pakistan at the same film. So somehow there was when also after that, the time of Palestinian revolution, there was a big movement by obviously a lot of the committed Iraqi filmmakers.
I mean, it's fairly open-ended in the sense, like, I mean, art, still art, there's video, there's all sorts of different art. A lot of it comes down to you have multiple ways that these models are created with all the inputs. Like, so just image alone, image and video. There's concern over likeness, like using faces, locations, different things that end up getting morphed in with other images to form new ones. But then a lot of the data is used to essentially train what we see in the real world relative to motion, lighting, whatever else. So it's like a camera were to pan from here to here, how that would affect the shadows on the face relative to where the sun is. And that requires a lot of data. If you don't have enough data, that's where you get the weird morphing. That's where you get Will Smith and spaghetti funny. Like, there's not enough like information to play off, and a lot of that isn't about the art, it's about, you know, how to make things naturalistic. So where that line gets drawn, it's tricky from the ethical sourcing standpoint, because there's a world of data that, whether it's ethically sourced or not, like a lot of data that comes in, the intention, even if it was scraped off the internet initially, wasn't to be used to like use images themselves. There's this is the, you know, it's going to be an ongoing debate for a while where those lines are drawn, like in terms of clean models that are ethically sourced or licensed. That's a start. But there's still debates on how, if there's enough data from that to affect like the real situations I mentioned. And beyond that, it's so much of it is subjective in terms of like what constitutes like something better or worse based on a lot of sourcing. And the world of, in my opinion, is the world of policing sourcing has gone like bye-bye. At this point, like, you know, like GPT, Microsoft doesn't even try to like back that up because it's impossible. It's impossible because they have used public domain content. And a lot of these models, like, it's, you know, they can say from this point forward we didn't use anything, and we can prove it, but there's no real policing from that anymore. The standards committee, it's, you know, it's a mess. So it really comes down to RP's point, like, what happens when it comes to, you know, the next iteration of lawsuits, someone's going to make a claim. That was really bad there, like, and what the court is saying, and then where those lines with the unions end up, you know, saying. So it's going to be a new Wild West.
I also think the ethical part, that was great. All that was fantastic. I thought everything Alan said was absolutely on point. It's also going to be the audience and the audience's appetite. When you're talking about the ethics of like what's the line, I also think you're talking about from a creator's standpoint, right? Well, that's, you know, my first answer falls into that, right? It's I believe that there will be guardrails in place to protect creators, but I also think that there will be an audience for AI-generated content. I don't want to watch it. Not my thing, but there's a lot of things that aren't my thing right now. Like I'm not, huge into animation, I'm not huge, I'll go watch a big story well told, right? But I do think that what you're seeing is an appetite, I guess, if you would, to protect artists. And that's what I was saying from a year ago to now, when this room was filled with fear, and I mean it really was, it was anxiety and fear and all of it, to now, I think we're seeing that, look, the dust is definitely in the air, but we can kind of see it and we know it's starting to settle a little bit, right? So, a year from now, we'll see where we're sitting. But I do think that there will be protections for creators, and then it really does come down to the appetite of audiences. If audiences are consuming it, they're going to want, the streamers are going to want Netflix is going to want more of it, everybody's going to want more of it, just the way it works, right? But I do think there'll be protections. I wouldn't be concerned about it.
And I'd just quickly say I'd love to welcome you to check out our piece in the immersive competition. To everyone, it's in the Carlton Hotel, so it's very accessible. And our piece, 20 people can be in it at a time. So I would love your thoughts if you consider it art.
Just one more quick bit. It's kind of the beauty of the Stage 32 network. Like, you have a world full of creatives, yet they're sharing solutions in this space. So as far as the creating side, there's a lot of it comes down to tools. Like what tools are cool, what's good, what's bad, and it's just, you can go to the internet, you can go to like Hugging Face, you can go to like many places, but within the Stage 32 network, you're actually getting recommendations from creators that actually care. So it's a world, and it's a great resource that way, as far as creating in this world.
And quick to Alan's point too, everybody on the stage here is a Stage 32 educator. So how many of you have taken webinars on Stage 32? Oh, I love that. Everybody who doesn't have your hand up, you need to be taking education on Stage 32 because this is the type of talent that we have teaching for us. So if you haven't done that, make sure you're doing that. All right, more questions?
That our main resource is student.
Hi, my name is Rick. I'm actually a college educator. And I had a question about the integrity of the data that you use to make decisions, particularly you're talking about focus groups. How do you stop an electronic focus group from bringing in the same biases and prejudices that you get in the real world? And then sort of perpetuate it, and there's this idea that somehow because it's AI generated, it's benign, but in a lot of ways it's a reflection of what's going on in the world. So I'm just curious as to how do you deal with the integrity of how you put all this together so that it doesn't end up being just or maybe it's the goal, it's just a reflection of who we are, but maybe we should try to be better than who we are. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's an important point. If you don't design your digital populations correctly, it might be very misleading. So here, I think the first thing important to note that is the approach, because there is two ways of creating digital populations. One is directly using AI in a synthetic way to create populations representing a country or a certain demographics. The second way is simulated, which what we do. So you take real people, there's a questionnaire process, survey process, they are asked 100 questions about their life, their preferences. That becomes a data for AI to create their digital twins, and then we have a Q&A process to see if that digital twin is really reflecting that person, that we are asking the same question to a real person, digital twin version of that person, to see if it's matching or not. And we accept only digital twins are having 90% correlation with the real person. That's the first part, but these are individuals. Then how you represent demographics, a country in a correct way. So for general commercial films, it's important to reflect the demographics in terms of age, gender, income group, ethnicity. So we get the general distribution of that to make sure it's well represented in every country, considering all main elements. But then we also allow micro audiences. You can go very specific in terms of, again, income group, gender, interest, job group. If there is not enough representation of these people, the people again go search with automatic panels to find more of these people to create representations.
Don't be to be patient and listen, but at the same time, I find you need people.
Oh, it's very interesting. I mean, in terms of script writing, and ChatGPT has been quite helpful, you know, as a sort of free writer with you. But obviously coming up with the ideas and asking it to research, maybe a real life story or something like that, and you ultimately give some of your story away in the process, perhaps asking other questions, asking it what it thinks about that storyline. Is there any danger in the future of maybe your scripts, your ideas being taken away, and what about IP, what about copyright?
Great projects.
Yeah, okay. Those all great questions, all great questions. I also think the fear in that is a little overblown. You know, I don't feed a lot of my scripts into there, right? What I feed is my ideas sometimes, and those ideas are more rooted in doing the research to pull out, not to kind of sit there and say these are the plot points, these are the character points. That one example I said at the beginning was a little like that, where I kind of put like a vague synopsis along with all that research and so it spit out. But I'm not going to utilize it that way, right? You know, as far as copyright and all that, I think that's, you know, when we start talking about, I understand the sort of ground floor fear of that, right? I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that, and this is where I feel like we're going to start seeing regulations and you know, laws and things that are going to be passed and lawsuits that are going to come that are going to set standards and so on and so forth. So, personally, I'm not fearful of it. Like, you know, I'm not worried about feeding the machine, so to say. Stories are stories. There's a million out there. There's not many original ones anymore. It's more about it really is more about your voice, and that's where I think you get lost, right? You know, on Stage 32 we have script consulting, right? Where you pick an executive, they read the script, and then you get to get on the phone with them. And really what you're paying for is not only an executive's feedback that works in the genre that you're picking or in the budget range or whatever it is you get to pick that way, but you're also getting access to that executive, which means you're getting their opinion about everything, where it's in the market, where this can sit in the marketplace, so it's a whole circle of you know, front end, you're writing it, you're finding the executive, you're getting access, you have access to that person. And then if a meeting comes out of that, we've had films come out of that. You know, we have 2 in theaters right now that came through that program, right? You don't get that with ChatGPT, right? You don't get that with ChatGPT coverage. You don't get that, like, you know, there's that second step that you need access to get the damn thing made. You know, AI is not going to make it for you, right? AI is not going to give you the money to go make a movie. So there's that aspect as well. So I look at it much, much more as a utility, as a tool, and I use the tool my way. Other people might use it another way.
Just real quick, I think it's important to know, it's important to understand how large language models work. Like, if RB were to put an idea into GPT, it's going to be a collection of words in a specific order. The words are a collection of letters in a specific order. Like, it's a pattern that it takes in. And even if it does use it, like when someone else asks it something else, it's pattern recognition, it's pattern regurgitation, it's taking all this data, and it's not a real intelligence, well, not yet, if ever. But it's just a sequence of letters at this point. It's not like, ooh, I'm going to use this idea and I'm gonna do something else or give it to someone else, or but it could come up if there's someone else has a similar idea. It's like, oh well, someone else went down this road with it before, but just based on the mass amount of data, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Alan, would you say it'd be safe to think of it almost like just binary?
It literally, it's not a binary tree. It's a multi-pronged, like it's a chess state machine, right? You just have a bunch of every node. There's just like millions more. I like to use the example. If you guys remember when John Connor is trying to get money from the ATM, like it's just kind of going through scanning all the possible bit combinations. That's generally how language models work. Just with a lot of data, it just has a lot of fingertips, and with like the decades of internet usage, internet data, it's just it seems intelligent because it's been fed by millions and millions of people at this point, billions of people.
Excellent. Any more questions? All right, guys, any last bits of advice for everybody in the audience before we say goodbye?
Just add that we are measuring AI adoption over 6 years. Like 6 years ago, once we first presented our own AI ideas, we saw like this 1 to 2% AI adoption. Now we measure it at around 30%. So I think the platforms like Stage 32 is having great impacts on that mediums. Trainings, education on that as well. That also to overcome the fear element is important to touch. So yeah, I think that it's great to have the platforms like that gives also the people the opportunity in an easy way to more interact AI tools and learn more about that.
They call the oil.
SAMI,
Just to experiment, to be open to the experimentation. We showed our piece in Amsterdam at IDFA, and then made it completely again when we showed it in January at BAM in Brooklyn, and it completely made it again for May because the technology is moving so quickly. And so I think the most important thing is remaining open and seeing the evolution as something that's worth engaging with and trying to play with. Don't be afraid.
Alan, any parting words or resources you want to give people in the audience?
In general, with everything going on in generative creation, like I think it's important to understand that we're talking about tools, and tools come down to the users, and the users are filmmakers. Like if you're a filmmaker, you're not going to just, or maybe you will use tools for the sake of it. Like whatever your craft is, you want to use the right tool for the job, and with filmmaking is very much the same thing. Generative helps in a lot of ways, but it's not. You don't have to make an entire film using generative. You can, and that's going to be a new form, and there's going to be a lot more content out there. But at the same time, and that is not good in general for the industry. Like it's just having more stuff, but that's how art works as well. That's when the Vericam came out, digital cameras, it was more content all of a sudden. When Sean Baker made Tangerine, even more content came out. Like, there's a world of beautiful content coming, but the other side of it is, I believe there's a lot of people that are enabled now that weren't enabled before. Guys that had these brilliant ideas, but it's like, I don't know how to raise $1 million, I don't know how to raise $100 grand or 50 grand. But now they can concept some of their ideas, and maybe that's the final product, maybe that's the POC for the next generation. But I think it's important just to understand, these are tools at this point, and have fun, don't be scared.
When they ask me,
I look at this is a very competitive business. You guys all know that, right? So to me, anytime something like this pops up, I'm looking for how I can get a competitive advantage using it. So when everybody was running away last year, I was running at it because I wanted to understand it, right? And I wanted to see if this was another tool in the shed that I could use to try to give myself a better, a competitive advantage. As Alan said, not just with the writing, but like understanding the business, understanding certain things that are going on, you know, like what's changing, what's happening, like getting as much information as humanly possible. So I'm a big believer in continuing education, which is why that's really what the brand revolves around, but it's also utilizing every tool out there to give me an advantage in the space. So you all just said it, let go of the fear. It's irrational. It's just completely irrational. And embrace it. Like I've had people that literally came up to me this week, I'm not joking, at least 2 times. They're like, you're doing an AI panel? You're selling out. Like you're selling out screen. I'm like, you don't even know what the hell you're talking about. Like you have no idea. But you get people that get that crazy. When I hear that, I go, I'm gonna go use that tool even more, right? So get rid of the fear, don't worry about it. We're all gonna come here a year from now and we're gonna have some beers after, you know, we'll do the next AI panel. Everybody's gonna feel good about it. Everybody's gonna be utilizing it in some capacity. And everybody in the room's gonna have a competitive advantage over everybody else walking around. So that's my final word.
I love that. Well, and apparently FilmUSA has like 250 cases of beer, so we'll have more than enough beer between this year and next year. But a lot of interesting stuff, you guys, don't you think, today? You know, and very hopeful and exciting. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the panelists, and you guys, thanks so much for being part of the Stage 32 community. If there is anybody in the audience who is not, one thing that you have to remember after cans, make sure you download the app, become a member of the Stage 32 community. We're definitely the most creative and helpful and supportive and safe space community on the planet. So thank you guys so much. The panelists, you guys were awesome.